Welcome back to TokiCast, my friend. Look closely at this. A small golden cup, no taller than a man's forearm, sitting in two trembling hands. It is heavy, almost 4 kilograms of gold and silver. On top stands a tiny winged woman, her arms raised to the sky. The man holding her is crying. And here's the strange thing. This little cup will one day be stolen twice, hidden inside a shoebox under a bed, buried in fear during a world war, and found by a small dog sniffing under a garden hedge. A scrolling viewer might not believe that last part, but it is true, and you will hear every piece of it tonight. Take a slow breath, and let me show you. A trophy hidden in a shoebox. A cup stolen and found by a dog named Pickles. A Frenchman who dreamed for 30 years before anyone listened. 13 lonely teams sailing across an ocean to a country most had never seen. A first goal scored by a man almost no one remembers. And a final, decades later, watched by nearly the whole living world at once. If this gives you a little calm and a little wonder, leave a like and subscribe. It means everything to us here at TokiCast. This is the story of how the FIFA World Cup was born. Let me take you back, my friend, to a quieter time. Football was already loved. In the muddy streets of England, in the squares of South America, in small towns across Europe, people kicked a ball and felt something bigger than themselves. But there was no true world champion. Each country played mostly with its neighbors. The Olympic Games offered football, yes, but only for amateurs, players who were not paid. And by the 1920s, the best players in the world were professionals. The Olympics could not hold them all. Into this gap stepped one quiet, determined man. His name was Jules Rimet. Remember that name, because the trophy you saw at the start will one day carry it. Rimet was French, born in 1873 in a small town called Toulon. His family was poor. As a boy, he moved to Paris, where he watched rich and poor children play football in the same dusty fields, and something gentle settled in his heart. He believed football could do what speeches and treaties often failed to do. He believed it could bring enemies to the same field, shake hands, and remember they were all human. Can you imagine holding that belief after the First World War? After millions had died? Europe was broken, grieving, full of anger between nations. And here was a man saying, "Let us gather the world around a ball." Many thought it was a beautiful, impossible dream. Rimet became president of FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, in 1921. FIFA had been founded back in 1904, in a small back room in Paris, by just 7 countries. It was tiny. It had almost no money. But Rimet had patience, and he had a vision he refused to let go. For years he worked quietly. And here is the small thing that changed everything. In 1928, FIFA finally voted to create its own world championship, a tournament open to professionals, open to every nation, held every 4 years. The dream had a date. The first one would be held in 1930. But now came a problem. Where? Which country would host the very first World Cup? Several European nations raised their hands. Italy, Sweden, the Netherlands, Spain. And then, from across the ocean, came a bold offer that surprised everyone. A small South American country said, "We will host it, and we will pay for everything. We will even pay the travel costs of the teams who come." That country was Uruguay. Can you imagine the courage of that? Uruguay was a nation of fewer than 2 million people. But in 1930, they had a reason to celebrate. It was the 100th anniversary of their independence, and their football team had just won Olympic gold, twice, in 1924 and 1928. They were, quietly, the best in the world. So they built a brand new stadium in their capital, Montevideo. They called it the Estadio Centenario, the Stadium of the Century. But here is the quiet part, my friend. When the invitations went out, Europe hesitated. The journey was the problem. To reach Uruguay, European teams had to cross the Atlantic Ocean by ship, a voyage of 2 or 3 weeks. Players had jobs. Clubs did not want to lose them for 2 months. One by one, the great football nations of Europe said no. England was not even a FIFA member then and stayed home. Italy said no. Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, all said no. Jules Rimet must have felt his dream slipping away. 30 years of hope, and now the first World Cup might have no Europeans at all. And then something happened that he did not expect. Rimet pushed, pleaded, and persuaded, and in the end, 4 brave European teams agreed to make the long journey: France, Belgium, Romania, and Yugoslavia. The Romanian team, it is said, was chosen personally by their young king, who even arranged time off from work for the players. Rimet himself boarded the ship, the SS Conte Verde, carrying something precious in his luggage, a small golden trophy, the one you saw at the very beginning. He kept it close, the entire way across the sea. Can you imagine that voyage? Players from 4 nations on one ship, training on the wooden deck, running in circles around the lifeboats, kicking a ball carefully so it would not fly into the ocean. Strangers who could barely speak each other's languages, sailing towards something no one had ever done before. Down in the hold, in Rimet's care, the little golden woman waited in the dark. 13 teams in total gathered in Uruguay in July 1930. 7 came from South America, 2 from North America, and those 4 from Europe. It was small, it was humble, but it was the world, finally meeting around a ball. The first matches kicked off on the 13th of July, 1930. 2 games were played that day, and in one of them, between France and Mexico, history was quietly made. A French player named Lucien Laurent stepped forward. The ball came to him, lifted by a teammate's cross. He struck it cleanly in the air, and it flew into the Mexican net. It was the very first goal in World Cup history. Lucien Laurent, remember him, my friend, because the world almost forgot him. He was not a famous star. He worked in a car factory back in France. Years later, he would say with a gentle smile that no photograph was even taken of that historic goal, because it was raining and snowing that day and no one thought it was special yet. He simply scored, ran back, and the game went on. He had no idea his name would live for 100 years. That is the small thing that changed everything. A quiet man, a single kick, and a record that can never be broken. France won that first match, but their joy did not last. They lost their next games and went home early. Here is the pain beside the joy. The same Lucien Laurent who scored the first goal in history left the tournament without a prize. He returned to his factory, but his moment was eternal. As the tournament went on, the crowds in Montevideo grew enormous. The Estadio Centenario, filled with tens of thousands of people, waving flags, singing, weeping. Uruguay's team marched forward, match after match, carrying the hopes of their tiny nation. And across the river, their great rivals were rising too. Argentina. These 2 neighbors, Uruguay and Argentina, shared a border, a language, and a deep, burning football rivalry. And by some twist of fate, both reached the final. Can you imagine the tension? The first World Cup final would be a battle between 2 neighbors who already could not stand to lose to each other. The final was held on the 30th of July, 1930. The morning was chaos. So many Argentine fans crossed the river by boat to watch that the docks overflowed. People were searched at the gates. Even small weapons were taken away. The rivalry was that fierce. The stadium held around 90,000 souls that day. Then came a small, almost funny problem that shows how new all of this was. The two teams could not agree on which ball to use. Argentina wanted their ball. Uruguay wanted theirs. Neither would give in. So the officials made a gentle, wise decision. They would play the first half with Argentina's ball, and the second half with Uruguay's. Can you imagine a World Cup final today pausing to swap the very ball at halftime? And here is the wonder, my friend. With Argentina's ball in the first half, Argentina led 2-1. But in the second half, with Uruguay's own ball, the home team came alive. They scored and scored and scored again. Uruguay won the final, 4-2. The whole nation poured into the streets. The next day was declared a national holiday, and Jules Rimet, the poor boy from Thule, the man who had dreamed for 30 years, walked onto the field and placed that little golden trophy into the hands of the Uruguayan captain. His impossible dream was now real, held up to the sky, shining. That trophy would later be renamed in his honor, the Jules Rimet Trophy. But the story of this little cup, my friend, was only beginning, and it would survive things no trophy should ever have to survive. The World Cup returned in 1934 in Italy, and in 1938 in France. Italy won both. The tournament was growing, gaining respect, drawing more nations each time. And then, the world fell into darkness. The Second World War came. From 1939 to 1945, the world had no time for football. There would be no World Cup in 1942, and none in 1946. The dream paused while the world wept. And now comes the most astonishing chapter of the trophy's life. The little golden cup was in Italy, kept by an Italian football official named Ottorino Barassi. As war spread and danger grew, Barassi feared the trophy would be stolen or melted down for its gold by occupying soldiers. So he did something quietly heroic. He took the golden cup out of its bank vault, wrapped it carefully, and hid it inside a shoebox. He kept that shoebox under his own bed, in his own bedroom, all through the war. Can you imagine it? The most precious trophy in football, the symbol of Jules Rimet's lifelong dream, hidden in an ordinary shoebox beneath a sleeping man's bed, while armies marched across Europe. It survived because one brave man refused to let it be lost. History rarely shouts. It whispers, and here it whispered from inside a shoebox. When peace finally came, the World Cup returned in 1950, once again in that football-loving land, Brazil. And slowly, the tournament grew into the giant we know, England, the country that invented modern football and had once refused to join, finally entered. And in 1966, hosting the tournament at home, England won its first and only title. But even that 1966 tournament gave the little trophy one more adventure, the one with the dog. A few months before the games, the Jules Rimet Trophy was put on public display in London, and then, shockingly, it was stolen. Thieves took the most famous trophy in the world. The whole nation panicked. Police searched everywhere. The pride of football had simply vanished. Then, 7 days later, an ordinary man named David Corbett was walking his dog in South London. The dog's name was Pickles. As they walked, Pickles began sniffing at a package wrapped in newspaper, pushed under a garden hedge. The man unwrapped it, and there it was. The stolen World Cup trophy, found by a little black and white dog out for an evening walk. Pickles became a national hero. He was given medals, invited to celebrations, even appeared in a film. A small dog had found what an entire police force could not. That is the small thing that changed everything. And you can see why people still smile telling it today. So let us breathe, my friend, and look at how far this little cup has traveled. It crossed an ocean in a ship. It was lifted to the sky by a tiny nation of 2 million. It survived a world war inside a shoebox. It was lost to thieves and found by a dog. And through it all, it carried one man's gentle dream, that the world could gather, again and again, around a single ball. The tournament Jules Rimet imagined now reaches almost every human being alive. Billions watch the final together. People who share no language, no country, no history, sit side by side and feel the same heartbeat, the same joy, the same heartbreak. It became exactly what a poor boy in Paris once believed it could be, a place where the whole world remembers it as human. We started with a small golden cup in trembling hands. We traveled through a 30-year dream, across an ocean on the Conte Verde, into a stadium called the Century. We met a factory worker who scored the first goal and was nearly forgotten. We watched two neighbors swap a ball at halftime. We hid a trophy in a shoebox through a war, and we found one again under a hedge, thanks to a dog named Pickles. And here is the quiet part, my friend, the part that is really about you. Jules Rimet did not begin with money, or power, or fame. He began with one stubborn belief and the patience to carry it for 30 years, while everyone said no. The first World Cup almost had no one. The trophy almost did not survive. Again and again, the dream lived only because someone ordinary refused to give up on it. A Frenchman, an Italian with a shoebox, a small dog in a park. None of them were giants. They were just people who protected something they loved. You have a small golden thing in your own hands right now too. A dream you carry quietly. Maybe people have told you it is impossible, or too far away, or too small to matter. But remember Rimet. Remember the shoebox. The biggest event on earth began as one gentle man's whisper, protected by ordinary hands across the years. Whatever you are carrying, carry it a little longer. The world changes through small things held by people who would not let go. Now tell me, my friend, which moment surprised you the most? The shoebox under the bed, the swapped ball at halftime, or little Pickles the dog sniffing out the most famous trophy in the world? Write it in the comments. I read them, and I love hearing which part stayed with you. And before you go, let me leave you with a small riddle for our next story. Picture a drink that began as a bitter accident, spilled by a tired worker far from home. A drink that sailed across seas in wooden barrels, started arguments between nations, and now sits warm in millions of cups every single morning. What is it? Come back soon, and we will find the one ordinary person at the heart of it. Until then, take care of yourself, my friend. This has been TokiCast, where the small things quietly change the world. I'll see you soon.